All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. First and foremost, welcome to another monthly meetup we're having over here at Windy City REI. Very excited to have you all over here. If it's your first time here, welcome. Make sure to reach out to all of us. Try and get as many contacts as you can because it's really a great group. Couple housekeeping items before we get started here. The GOB Network Conference that we're going to be hosting here in Chicago in less than 3 weeks from now on July 13th and 14th. It's coming up. We got a great group of guests that's going to be coming, including Jay Scott from Bigger Pockets. We've got Luke Wren, who's trained under Tony Robbins over the past 10, 15 years. We've got our very own Mike Morowski. We've got John Kasman, a ton of really experienced people in the industry that's going to be there. So make sure you sign up. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, every single person who's here today can use a special discount code, WindyCityREI, and it'll get you a ticket for $97 for both days. So make sure you check it out. It's going to be at the Westin Chicago O'Hare, July 13th and 14th. The second announcement is just on behalf of our team here. Apart from hosting this monthly meetup, we've been putting a lot of work on our own time and building up our real estate investment firm, freedominvesting.com. It officially went live this week, and we're going to be starting up a podcast that's going to be released every single week. And that goes live on Monday as well. So if you're interested or you know anyone who's interested in passively investing, reach out to us or go to www.freedominvesting.com. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Our guest today is a very special guest. He's a regular attendee over here at our meetup. He has nearly 30 years of experience here in the multifamily real estate space. He's been a broker, he's been a banker, he's been an investor, property manager, and he's also a certified trainer of Think and Grow Rich with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And today, we're going to be sharing a lot of his tips and insights or that he's learned over the past few years and teaching in some of his classes, as well as his book, which he's going to be giving away to some of you guys today. Everybody give a round of applause here for our very own Carl News.
Oh, Carl. So welcome everybody. So I see some of the folks here, you know me, others don't. So I'm going to introduce myself in a minute, but I do want to just ask, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today comes right out of my experience with the Napoleon Hill Foundation and the book Think and Grow Rich. So that's a book that surprisingly a lot of people have heard about and a lot of people haven't heard about. So I just want to kind of get a gauge. Has everybody heard of Andrew Carnegie before? Because it really started with Andrew Carnegie. Okay, so yeah, Andrew Carnegie was a steel magnate. He was the guy that put together U.S. Steel. And the funny thing is, if he was alive today, he'd be wealthier than Bezos, Branson, all of those guys put together. I mean, he had a ton of money. And the whole Think and Grow Rich technology and philosophy really started with an interview that Napoleon Hill had when he was a young man. And his first subject was Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie was a guy that came to this country from Scotland. He had nothing. And he, at the end of his life, he gave away most of his money, which was about $500 million. And that was in the early 20s. So you can only imagine. So from there, Napoleon Hill took interviews with hundreds of people that Andrew Carnegie introduced him to, and asked them the same question over and over again: what made you successful? And over a 20-year period, he came up with what became Think and Grow Rich, the 13 principles of success. And all the individuals he talked to said they used this blueprint to actually achieve great success. So that's what I've been studying for years, and that's the work that I've done is grounded in those 13 principles. Napoleon Hill also retired and was brought out of retirement and wrote another book called 17 Lessons of PMA, Positive Mental Attitude. And that's another piece of work that you keep alive at the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So, so that's Andrew Carnegie, Napoleon Hill. I'm sure you've all heard of Earl Nightingale. Does that name ring a bell? The Strangest Secret. That was a great thing. He's no longer with us. And of course, Zig Ziglar, Dr. Dyer, my mentor who passed away in April, Bob Proctor. I had an opportunity to work with him for many years one-on-one, and he was very influential in my study. And then another gentleman that probably most of you have never heard of is Don Green. Don Green is the current chairman of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. He's a wonderful man. He is also, like Bob, a living link to Napoleon Hill. They both worked with Napoleon Hill and were trained by Napoleon Hill. And I've been very fortunate to have worked with them as well. So For those of you that don't know me, my name's Carl Moose. As mentioned, I used to be a banker. I got into buying multifamily, and I've never really bought any residential real estate. I started off buying multifamily because I was lending money to those investors, and they looked at me and said, "Moose, why don't you have any property?" And I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, "That's a good point." So I jumped in. Bought an 18-unit building at 638 West Garfield. Building was built back in the 1880s. California style building. It was operating but not operating as well as it could have been. Raised the money for that. That came directly out of my coaching with Bob Proctor. I told Bob many times I wanted to buy property. He said, "Well, why don't you go buy some property?" And I said, "I didn't have any money." And he said, "Well, don't let that stop you." And I said, "What do you mean don't let that stop you?" He said, "Find the property, write the contract, and the money will come to you." And I said to him, "Bob, where's it going to come from?" He looked at me and he said, "I don't know, wherever it is right now." And he was serious about that, and so I said, "Okay." So I that's exactly what I did. I wrote a contract, had no idea how I was going to raise the money. I was at a networking event and was just telling people, "This is what I'm doing. I've got a contract. It's an 18-unit building. Here's the NOI, operating expenses, the whole 9 yards." And I said, "I'm looking for investors." Well, one of the individuals I was talking to, "So you should talk to my attorney. His name's Paul, and he's got a group of attorneys that invest in real estate." I said, "That's great." I said, "Can you introduce me to him? Give him my number, have him call me." He said, he's right over there. So he literally walked me over to Paul, and within 2 days, Paul's group put up the $1 million I needed for the piece of property. That would not have happened if it wasn't through the coaching of Bob Proctor that said, "Write the contract, don't worry about the money, it will come to you." And so we went on to buy about 22 buildings, not using a nickel of my own money, just to let you know. I operated them and got them financed and everything else. And it really, the work I did with Bob really changed the way I thought, and really changed my attitude about what I was capable or able to do. And that's one of the reasons why I've been studying this material for so long, and ultimately wrote the book that I did write, which is called Unstoppable You. And one of the things Bob used to tell me, he said, "Carl, I believe in you." He said, "Even when you don't believe in yourself and you doubt yourself, believe in my belief in you." And that got me through a lot of humps. And it still does today. Even though Bob passed away a couple months ago, he's still with us intellectually and spiritually. He's not with us physically, but I still hear his voice. And when I doubt myself or I'm not confident what I'm doing, I believe in his belief in me. And that's one of the things I want to share with you all. And Bob used to also tell me, he said, "It's not a question of ability. It's a question of willingness." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "If you want to get over your doubt, find somebody that's done something you've done. And if they're able to do it, you're able to do it too. The question is, are you willing? Right? Are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to invest? Are you willing to study and put in the long hours?" And if you really think about it, that's really the only question there is. Are you willing? Because if somebody else has done something that you want to do, then you're able to do it as well. And however, it's going to take you to make a decision and be willing to do it. So that's one of the things I'll talk about in a bit. I do want to just grab my notes real quick, so I don't forget anything. I want to encourage you to take some notes, because I'm going to give you a lot of information, and I'm going to give you a few phrases. If you've got something to take notes, feel free. I also have a sheet of paper over there that's got some information about how to reach out to me. I have PDFs on everything I'm going to talk about, so I'd be more than happy to share that with you as well. But there's a couple of quotes from the book Think and Grow Rich I want to share with you. One of Napoleon Hill's, probably his most famous quote, was, he said, "Any man," I changed that to any person, "who can conceive and believe can achieve." In other words, if you believe in something, or if you conceive something, and you think of something, and you believe that you can achieve it, it will come to fruition. That's one of his most famous sayings. Conceive, believe, achieve. One of the other ones was actually given credit to FDR. Napoleon Hill knew Eleanor Roosevelt, and before he was first elected in 1932 as president, he shared this with Eleanor Roosevelt. He shared it with FDR, who used it in his first inaugural speech. It was, "The only thing to fear is fear itself," right? That was actually from Napoleon Hill. A lot of people think FDR came up with that. So that's another one of his famous ones. And then another one directly from the book, that was Henry Ford. What Henry Ford said was, "Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right." Right? And that was his philosophy. If you say you can do it, you can do it. If you say you can't do it, you can't do it. So you're right either way. So that's just a couple of really great quotes that come from the book, Think and Grow Rich. And as mentioned, I'm a member of the foundation. I'm a certified trainer with Think and Grow Rich material, and also the positive mental attitude. I want to, before I talk about the book specifically, it's a very short book. By the way, I think I may have enough to give everybody here without any problem. I've got about 10 copies. I was going to do a contest, but you know, we can get you all a copy of that, no problem. But I want to just set the context. So one of the things that I want to share with you is the difference between ego and subconscious. The subconscious mind is one of the chapters in the book Think and Grow Rich. There's 13 chapters. You know, if you haven't ever read the book, none of the names of the chapter in the book have the word money, right? The chapters are desire, faith, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge, imagination, organized planning, the brain, subconscious mind, energy, the mastermind, which is what this is, right? The mastermind, the sixth sense, and then overcoming fears. So the word money doesn't appear in a single one of the chapter titles. And that's because the book is really more than just about earning money. It's about wealth in all areas of your life, right? So I just want to share a couple of things right directly from the book. It makes a distinction between ego and subconscious, right? Our subconscious mind is one of our mental muscles. As human beings, we're all endowed with six mental muscles. And our subconscious mind is one of those, right? Our ego is something we develop, right? And your ego can normally get you in more trouble than it keeps you out, right? And the way that it develops for all human beings is three things happen to human beings as they go through their lives, right? And I want you to take a look and see if you recognize this, because we're all old enough where we've probably gone through all three, right? The first thing is, as a little kid, you realize something's wrong, right? You realize something's wrong. I'll give you an example in my life. I was about 5 years old. I was the youngest of three kids. We were on vacation. My dad was playing with my older sister and my older brother. They were in the pool. We were in the 3 feet. I could barely keep my head above water, right? And they wanted to go play in the deep end. Well, I was afraid of the deep end, right? And I was just a little kid. So my older sister, who's 4 years older than me, says, "Come on, don't worry about it. I'll put you on my back and we'll go in the deep end," right? So I crawled up. As soon as we got to the deep end, she went under. And I literally thought I was going to drown, right? Now, my mom and dad, my mom was sitting on the sidelines. My dad was in the pool, was about this far away, so I wasn't going to drown. But in that moment, I literally thought I was going to drown, right? So what did I do? I dog paddled over to the side. And my dad, and what it said to me, he said, "Well, if you can't play with the big kids in the deep end, go sit with your mommy," right? And I looked at him, I said, "Okay." So I went over, crawled out. You know, I thought my mom was going to wrap a towel around me and make me feel good, but she was busy reading Cosmopolitan or whatever in the sun, right? So she just looked at me and said, "You're gonna cry like a baby, sit there by yourself," right? Exactly. So this was my moment when there's something wrong, right? Like, this picture doesn't fit here. Like, my dad was usually supportive, my mom was usually warm and cuddly, and so there I was. I'm getting goosebumps actually when I say this. I'm sitting there, my lips are blue, you know, I'm all by myself. And in that moment, I said to myself, I'm never going to show fear again. I'm going to not show weakness, right? So what did I do? I stood up, I yelled at the top of my lungs, I ran, I jumped in the deep end, right? I dog paddled back over to the side. My dad was cheering me, my mom was cheering me, my brothers and sisters were going, "Oh, that's awesome," right? Now, you know the funny thing about that is, when I tell that story to my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters, they don't even remember. Right? They don't even remember the moment. But for me, it's as real as today as it was then, right? That was my moment of something's wrong. The next one is I don't fit in, right? I don't fit in. For me, it happened when I was 11 years old. I was a hockey guy, right? And we were going through 3 days of hockey trials for the travel team, right? And at the end of the trial, they put the name of the team, the guys that made the team, on the door, right? So all the kids would come out of the locker room, you go up and look at the name, you look for your name on the door, right? So I'm standing there, and I was one of the youngest kids, and I didn't see my name on the door, on the roster, right? So I stood there and I looked, you know, I was 10, 11 years old. All the other kids went away, right? And I'm standing there, my dad comes over and goes, "Are you ready to go?" I said, "Come on, that's Dad." I said, "These are all the kids that didn't make the team, right? Like, the kids that made the team, they don't put their name up there." He said, No, those are the kids that made the team, and your name's not on there," right? So I looked again, I couldn't find my name, right? It would seem like an eternity. My dad said, "Come on, we got to go. Your name's not there," right? Well, in that moment, when I felt like I didn't fit in because I didn't make the team, I said to myself, "I'm never not going to make the team again." Right? I'm never not going to make the team again. So every team I tried out for, all-star teams, college teams, semi-pro, I made those teams. I also got every job that I ever applied for as well, or at least I got an offer. And it came out of that moment when I said to myself, I don't fit in, right? So this is the development of my ego. The last one which happens is I'm on my own, right? So the first one is there's something wrong. Second one is I don't fit in. The third one is I'm on my own. And for me, it's when I went out, I was invited out to play in the USHL. I was 19 years old, and I was the Premier League for kids that are 16, 17, 18. I was 18, I'm sorry, in the US, right? So I worked out, I got in shape and everything else. I get out there. And at the first day of tryouts, I was just another guy on the team. Where before I was, an all-star, one of the better players. And I realized that night that I was on my own. There was nobody else who was going to come and help me or anything else. So that's one of the things that helped me develop my ego. I wasn't born with those things. Those are the things that developed my ego into the person that I am today. So I want to share that with you. Just something to take a look at, because I think if you all think about it, you can see in your own life where one of those things happen. Because for most human beings, by the time you're in your mid-20s, you've gone through those three things. So that's one of the things. I talked a little bit about the mental muscles. Mental muscles are something Bob really impressed me with. He said, all human beings have these 6 mental muscles, right? And it's unique to human beings, right? It's our intuition, our imagination, our memory, our perception, our reasoning ability, and our will, right? Which is basically the ability to focus. And doing some research on there was a gentleman back in the 1800s named Robert Bernard Shaw. And he said, mind is man and man is mind. He said, everything else you can find in a pig or a horse. And if you think about it, it's true. A pig and a horse has everything else that a man has, or a woman, or a human has in their body, except the mental faculties, right? The 6 mental muscles. That's what really makes us unique. And when you understand that, which I came to understand through my training and through reading these books, is that you can work your mental muscles just like you work your biceps or your thighs or anything else, right? How many times have you heard somebody say, I have a terrible memory, right? Don't buy into it. You actually have a perfect memory. Your subconscious mind records every sensory perception since the day you're born. You may not be able to recall them all, which is different than memory. You may not be able to recall them, but they're recorded, right? So how do you work your biceps? Right? You work out. Right? How do you work your mental muscle? You use your intuition. Bob Proctor, he was an amazing guy. It's a shame that I can't recommend you guys meet him in person because he was an amazing person to be around. He was one of the most intuitive people I've ever met in my life. Every time you talked to him, it was like you were the only person on earth. And he would recall something you told him or a feeling that you were having because he was so intuitive. And it's because he worked his intuition. So those are something else that came out of my training, just really understanding how you can train your brain. And by using the mental muscles, you can really elevate your success. So I just wanted to share that with you. One of the things I talk about in the book, and we'll get to the chapters in a minute, it talks about the 5 key areas of your life, right? And I struggled with this because Bob used to say to me, Carl, what do you want to do? And I'd say to him, no, that's a hard question to answer, Bob. He said, no, break it into the 5 key areas of your life. I said, what do you mean? And he said, the 5 key areas of your life, right? Your relationships, your health and your wellness, your health being your body, your wellness being your mind, your education, your profession, your resources, revenue, money, call it whatever you want, call it your finances, and then your spirit, which I believe we're all spiritual beings, right? So when we put me through that exercise, it made more sense. He said, pick the one area of your life that you want to work on now, right? Whether it's your relationships, or your health, your profession, your finances, or your spirit, whatever. Just pick one and focus on that. And when he put me through that exercise, it was much easier and simpler for me to see progress not only in the particular area that I chose, but in all areas of my life, kind of like a ship in a harbor. The ship's in a harbor, right? When the tide comes in, what happens? They all rise, right? All the ships rise. So when you're elevating your relationships, everything else, all the other ships in the harbor are going to rise. In other words, the other areas of your life are going to improve as well. So that was one of the other key things that came out of this training. And when we talk about being unstoppable, just pick one area of your life where you want to be unstoppable, and you'd be amazed how all the other areas of your life elevate as well. And we're here for real estate, right? So when I talk to real estate, a lot of times they're looking at their profession or their finances, right? Which makes total sense. If that's what you're here for, focus on that. Focus on making advances in those two areas. And you'd be surprised how your health and your wellness and your relationships and your spirit will elevate as well. So that's one of the key things that I took out of this book. The other thing I want to point out in the very beginning of the book, there's a diagram that talks about our comfort zone, right? It talks about our comfort zone. So I told the story about when I was a little kid, right? I was comfortable in the 3 feet, right? I was afraid of anything outside of the 3 feet until my fears were until the attention I wanted to get from my brothers and my sisters and my mom was greater than my fears, right? Well, that goes right to the diagram in the beginning of the book. Our comfort zone is where our ego wants to keep us, right? Our ego doesn't want you to expand beyond that because it doesn't know how to deal with it, right? Well, the next zone beyond the comfort zone is the fear zone, right? And we're going to talk about fears in a minute because we all have 7 human fears. Every fear that you can think of falls into one of these buckets, right? And that zone is the hardest to break through until you understand and can act in the face of your fears, which is the definition of courage, right? You can't be courageous without any fear. So that fear zone is what we bump into when we're starting to stretch and get out of our comfort zone, right? Well, guess what's beyond the fear zone? The learning zone, right? So your comfort zone, you go through the fear zone, now you're into the learning zone, right? And the next zone beyond that's the growth zone, right? Guess what's after that? A new comfort zone, right? So it's a process, and it never ends unless you decide to stay in your comfort zone, right? And it's a decision, by the way, when you're aware of it. And listen, there's times when I'm afraid, just because I've studied this stuff and I speak about everything else, this stuff still comes up for all of us, right? And how do I break through my fear zones? Because I recognize it and I acknowledge it. And I say, okay, no big deal. I get it. This is what's coming up right now. And I know what's on the other side of it. I'm going to learn something new and I'm going to grow in a way I haven't grown before, right? And then I'm going to reach another comfort zone. So I talk about that right in the beginning of the book, right? And then I forget who said it, but a mind once expanded never returns to its original form, right? Once you get beyond that comfort zone and you create a new comfort zone, you're never going to go back to that original comfort zone because your mind is expanding, right? And then once you understand that, it just makes everything so much simpler and so much easier. It's when fear comes up, you just recognize it and say, okay, it's an opportunity for me to retreat back into my comfort zone or push through and be courageous, right? And so that's one of the things that helps people become unstoppable. People that are unstoppable have fears, right? They have issues, they're human, but somehow they blast through it, right? It's because they understand this stuff and they take fear for what it's worth, right? A couple other things I want to talk about real quick. I love when people say, I need this or I need that, right? Well, I had this conversation with Don Green, who again is the chairman of the Napoleon Foundation. And he said, Carl, when people tell me they need something, they're just nothing but need to me. I said, what do you mean by that, Don? He said, don't tell me what you need, tell me what you want, right? And I said, okay, that makes sense to me. So we went back and forth, and we came up with an acronym that I think represents needs. As long as human beings have been around, which some people say are about 2.5 million years. Think about that for a second, right? 2.5 million years, human beings have been around in some form or another. All that human beings have ever needed to survive is what we call S.N.O.W. That's it, S.N.O.W. Sleep, nourishment, oxygen, and water. That's it. If you take any one of those 4 things away from human beings for any extended period of time, they will not survive, right? To thrive, is a whole other story. There's an infinite number of desires or wants that people come up with to thrive. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to just survive, you want to thrive, right? And so Don used to say, don't tell me what you need, tell me what you want, and I can help you get it, right? So when someone tells you they need something, it goes in one ear and out the other. Someone tells you what they want, what they desire, and what they're inspired by, you get inspired, right? You get excited. You think of ways to connect with them and to help them, right? That's the big distinction between people telling you they need something and people telling you what they want. Bob used to make me go through the dictionary when I come up with a word like that, and make me black it out. Make me black out the word if, black out the word should, right? All those, black out the word but. I just don't use those words anymore. They're not empowering. I said, don't use the word need. And by the way, if any of you hear me say the word need, call me on it, okay? And my kids say, well, Dad, I need some money. I said, no, you require some money. There's a difference. There's a distinction. Or you want money to do something. There's a difference, right? So it's just a way of thinking. But it's those little subtleties that make all the difference in the world. And by the way, you can recognize it when people talking. If I say, hey, I want this is what I desire, you react to them differently, right? You just do. And I've learned that over time. The last thing I want to talk about is purpose versus vision versus goals, right? Purpose, vision, goals. There's another old saying, the two most important days of your life, I'm sure someone can finish that for me, right? The day you're born and the day you find out why, right? Two most important days of your life. And that talks about purpose. We are all here for a purpose. If you don't believe that, you should start hanging around with some different people, because that's the reality. We are not physical beings having spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having this physical experience, and we're here for a purpose, right? Everything I do, including the speech, my purpose is to create safety and security, comfort and pleasure for myself, my family, my friends, and my community, right? Safety and security, comfort and pleasure, myself, my family, my friends, and my community. That's everything I do. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I study. That's why I do podcasts. That's it. That's my purpose. Now, how I do that, how I see myself doing that, is my vision. That's going to change. But I've been on this purpose for over 10 years. And 10 years from now, if you meet me, I guarantee it's going to be the same thing. How it unfolds is the vision, right? I envision myself writing a book, writing a series of books, speaking, engaging, teaching classes, right? That may change, but my purpose doesn't change. Your goals are absolutely going to change, right? So it's purpose, vision, and then your goals, right? The goals are going to change depending on the resources, depending on the different circumstances, right? Depending on your situation, right? Those are going to change, but your purpose is the key thing. I'll give you a real quick example. About 4 years ago, actually more like 6 years ago, my mom and dad celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary, right? The whole family wanted to get together in Cleveland, right? There was no way I was going to miss that trip. No way to hang out with my family, right? So in this example, the overarching purpose was to go and hang out with my family and celebrate my parents' 70th anniversary, right? So the vision of how that was going to happen, I had to drop the dog off the day before. We were going to get the car packed at 6 a.m. We're going to leave Chicago by 7. We're going to beat traffic, get to Indiana by, that was the vision, how we're going to do that, right? Hit certain milestones along the way. Well, it ended up when I went to drop the dog off, I thought the place had closed at 7, it closed at 6. So I had to still deal with the dog, right? So we didn't get out of there until 8 o'clock, right? We hit traffic. So all those things started piling up, right? But my purpose was to I would have walked to Cleveland. If I came out and my car was missing, I would have got there one way or the other, right? And again, the example I'm using is the purpose was to go spend time with my family and celebrate my parents' anniversary. There's nothing that was going to stop me, right? How it unfolded, how I saw it unfolding, right? The milestones along the way, that was irrelevant, right? And so that's, when I talk about purpose, vision, goals, that's something to think about. What did Napoleon Bonaparte say? He said, I only see the objective. I only see the objective. The obstacles must give way. Right? That was one of his famous sayings. And that talks directly about what I just talked about. He only saw the objective. The obstacles must give way. And when you have that attitude, you're unstoppable. Right? So that's what I want to share before I talk specifically about the book. And this part is going to go pretty quickly because the book is only 5 chapters. It's very short. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts at this moment? Okay. Well, let's talk about the book for a second. It's really, as you can see, it's not very long. It's only about 50 pages. And I want to make it, I went back and forth about the design. I really want to make it so you can put it in your back pocket or put it right here. But the guy that helped me put it together really helped me out quite a bit. And it's only 5 chapters long. This came directly out of my work with the Napoleon Foundation and Think and Grow Rich. The last chapter of the book, Think and Grow Rich, is the epilogue. And it's outwitting the ghosts of fear. Right? And let me start there because it's the first chapter of the book. There's 7 human fears that we all experience. Right? The first 4 are emotional or social. In other words, they have to do with outside of ourselves. It's the fear in no particular order. Fear of criticism or judgment. It's the first one. The fear of loss of love or affinity towards others. It's the second one. The fear of poverty or success, which by the way is the same fear. There are some people that are afraid to succeed. Right? Think about that. And then the fear of loss of liberty or freedom. Those are what we call the 4 social fears. They have to do with our interaction with others, right? The next 3 fears are internal, right? The fear of illness or weakness. We all experience that, right? The whole world was operating out of that fear, right? Or most people, or you can see it on their faces. The fear of old age or weakness. And the fear of death, which is really the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of oblivion. We don't know what's out there after death. So those are the fears. Yeah, the social fears, economic or emotional fears. For most people in real estate, they're operating out of fear of poverty, fear of loss of love, or fear of judgment. That's what stops most people from getting into real estate or taking their game to the next level. And in the book, Think and Grow Rich, and in this book, we go through each of those fears. We talk about the origin of those fears. We talk about how to move beyond those fears. Because remember, I talked about the fear zone. That's what's in operation. And when you can recognize which fear is in operation, you can move beyond them. You can act courageously to get beyond them, right? And so in real estate, I mean, I remember before I wrote my first contract. Who hasn't written a contract in real estate? Okay. It's great. So most of you have written your first contract, right? Do you remember the first time you wrote a contract? I do. It took me like 3 hours to write. I was whiting it out. I ripped the one up. I wrote another because I didn't know what I was doing. I was afraid of someone criticizing me or judging me, right? Now I can write a contract in 5 minutes, right? I'm sure you have to do it enough, right? But that's one of the things that stops people. The fear of judgment, the fear of criticism, right? Another one is the fear of poverty. They think they're going to make a bad bet. I got news for you. I've lost. And I'm sure other people can say the same thing. Lots of money in real estate. You know, the law of averages coming. You want to win more than you lose. My point is, if that stops you, then you're never going to move beyond that zone. You're going to go right back in your comfort zone, right? Could be the fear of loss of love or affinity. You know, maybe nobody else in your family's ever bought a building or a piece of property or taken down that road. So your ego gets in there and goes, well, why do you think you can do that? Right? Your ego says, nobody in your family's ever done that. You know, who do you think you are, right? Rockefeller? You know, money doesn't grow on trees, right? Can you recognize that BS that runs in your head? That's your ego talking, right? And you're operating out of fear. And those are the things that stop us. Usually in real estate, people aren't worried about, you know, getting ill if they buy a piece of real estate, right? Or dying if they buy a piece of real estate, right? It's usually fear, criticism, poverty, right? And so when you recognize that, and you recognize the source of that for yourself, you can move out of your comfort zone, go right through the fear zone. And now you're into the learning zone and ultimately the growth zone. And that's really what the first chapter is about. Second chapter I touched on earlier, it's about doubt, right? It's about doubt. If you doubt your ability to do what somebody else has done, change the conversation. It's not about ability. It's about willingness. It's about willingness. right? I remember Bob put me through this exercise. I wanted to buy $100 million in real estate, which was a big number, right? By the way, I never got to it. I know some people in this room have, it wasn't me. But Bob in my training, he said, what's the problem? He said, I don't know how to do it. I doubt I can do it. And Bob, who was not in real estate, said, Carl, is there anybody in Chicago that owns $100 million in real estate? I said, yeah, a ton of people. Some of them are my clients. And he said, well, Mr. B, well, if they can do it, you can do it. I didn't believe him, right? Because I doubted myself, right? And his coaching was, if they're able to do it, so are you. The question is, are you willing? Are you willing? And if you doubt yourself, remember, there's other people who believe in you and believe in their belief in you. It will get you over that hump. Because if there's something you want to do, like writing a book, by the way, this was an idea I had for a long time. There's a woman named Melissa Wilson who I've known forever. She was a student of mine. She's written 11 books. She kept harping on me. Carl, if I can do it, you can do it. You know, take some of your own medicine, right? It's not a question of ability, it's a question of willingness, right? So we all have examples of that when we doubt ourselves. You know, it's easier for me to see you succeed than it is to see myself succeed. That's just a human thing, right? But remember, if you doubt your own ability, find somebody that's done what you want to do. Mimic them, mirror them, follow them, and understand it's just a question of willingness. And that's what the second chapter is about. The third chapter is confusion, right? And you'll see how all these kind of mix together, right? Fear, doubt, confusion, indecision, worry. Those are the chapters in the book, right? So fear, doubt, confusion. You just don't know what to do, right? Okay, now I wrote the contract. What do I do with it now, right? Or I just bought this building. What do I do next? Or I just got this investor lined up to come into our organization. Now what, right? It's the same idea. If you're uncertain about what to do, find somebody that has a specialized knowledge that's required for you to succeed. You notice I didn't say that you need to succeed. I said that's required for you to succeed. And mastermind with them. Get together with them. And you know, I gotta tell you, I take my hat off to you guys. This group is a great mastermind. Which, by the way, the definition of a mastermind is 2 or more people working harmoniously towards a common goal. A mastermind is not pay somebody on the internet to hang out with them on a chat room. That's not a mastermind. The true definition of a mastermind is 2 or more people working harmoniously towards a common goal. And this group is a true mastermind. And I tell people all the time, come to groups like this. If you want to interact with people who are doing real estate, come to groups like this. Participate. And the thing I love about the real estate community, very rarely have I ever heard somebody say, you know what, I can't help you, I don't have time for it. Right? It's usually someone comes up and says, hey man, I've never bought a building before and I want to buy a building and I really love what you've done. Can you help me? 99% of the time, the real estate people say, yeah, how can I help you? Or if they can't help you, they'll say, well, you should go talk to this person or that person. I mean, that's my experience. And so again, if you're uncertain what to do, get off your rear end, right? Get to the groups, talk to people, listen to podcasts. You'll figure it out. Align yourself with people because that uncertainty will go right out the window. And it's that simple. It really is that simple. So that's the third chapter. The fourth chapter is indecision, right? Chapter 7 of the 7th principle of thinking for rich is decision. How many of you have taken a course in decisions? They don't teach them, right? They don't teach them. And that's one of the greatest benefits of reading the book Think and Grow Rich. You literally learn how to make powerful decisions like that, right? And they're all based on your desire. Now, what time is it right? 3 o'clock? 2:50. 2:50. I'll wrap up pretty quickly. If you got up at a normal hour this morning, you probably had an opportunity to make 100 micro decisions today, right? Do I get out of bed now or do I hit the snooze? Do I take a shower or do I go for a run? Coffee or tea? What color shirt am I going to wear, right? Do I take an Uber or a cab? Right? These are called micro decisions, right? But they're important to pay attention to because just like working your muscles, the way you make decisions on a micro level will affect how you make decisions on a macro level when you have to make those really powerful decisions. The book tells you exactly how to do that. And successful people make decisions in a very specific way. And he tells us how to do it. And that is a lesson you can take to the bank immediately, because before you go to bed tonight, you're going to have another opportunity to make 100 micro decisions. And getting in the practice of making powerful decisions the way people like Andrew Carnegie, Tesla, you name any powerful person, they make decisions in a certain way, right? And I'll give it to you real quickly. They gather enough information required to make the decision, right? They base their decision on their desire, what they want. It's all desire based, right? When they have the information, they make the decision. The next step is they get an action plan, they get into action, and they never look back, right? Where most people get tripped up is analysis to paralysis, right? Looking for too much, they've read books, they've taken classes, right? I remember years ago, I taught a class on commercial real estate. I had a woman that wanted to give me 20 grand to coach her. I said, oh, that's great. I said, you ever do a coaching program before? She goes, oh, I've done tons of them. I said, really? Like how many? She goes, about 7. I said, oh, that's great. I said, how many properties did you own? She said, I haven't bought any property yet. I said, you know what? You should probably keep your money and go buy a piece of property. I said, you don't need to study anymore. I refuse to take her money. I said, put that money in, go buy a piece of property. You've got all the education you need. And then she was a classic case of just, analysis to paralysis. No plan, no action, always doubting herself, getting somebody else's opinion. So this chapter on indecision is really powerful. With regard to that, real quickly, anywhere you're procrastinating in your life, decision is the antidote to procrastination. Anywhere you're procrastinating, it's because you haven't made a decision that's based on your desire. So the way to get beyond that, create a bigger desire in that particular area. The bigger the desire, the bigger the decision, procrastination will go right out the door. And we all have examples of that, right? All of us. Anywhere in your life you're procrastinating right now, it's because you haven't made a big enough desire-based decision. If you want to stop procrastinating, that's the key right there. And we talk about that in the book. The last chapter is the shortest chapter. It's about worry. Bob used to tell me, if you worry, you don't trust. And if you trust, you don't worry. You can't do both of those things at the same time. So if there's any area of your life that you're worried about, it's because there's a lack of trust. That's simple. You want to get rid of worry, put trust in that particular area, right? That chapter is really short because that's it. That's the secret. Any place you're worried, there's a lack of trust. You can't trust and worry at the same time. So that's basically what I wanted to cover. If anybody has any questions, you can. And for those of you that know me, I can talk about this stuff for hours. I love it. If anybody has any questions about Napoleon Hill or the foundation or Think and Grow Rich or what we talked about here, I'd be more than happy to address that either on the forum here or I'll be here until the hockey game starts.
Guys, that was awesome.
Woo!
Based on like what your course kind of goes over the whole 8-week course you have.
Yeah, so I used to do a 16-week course, which covered each of the chapters of the book because there's an introduction. It's actually 16 chapters. So I can that's down to 8 weeks. So it's a course on focus. Each week we take 2 principles, and a lot of the principles overlap. So we take the principles from the book and we go over them. It's a Zoom call. It's an hour. Everything's recorded. All the notes are provided, all the bonus material, and people love it. I mean, I'm biased. I teach it, but I went through the same course with Bob Proctor. I was very fortunate to have the master in my book, teach me. So I've put thousands of people through it. We have one coming up in July. If anybody's interested, if you're a member here, I'll give you a 50% discount. We usually charge about $6.95. But on the sheet of paper, there's information about that, or you can just reach out to me. People had some amazing results coming out of that. That's all I can say. By the way, you guys are more than welcome for help. So anybody that's interested, I'd be more than happy to tell you more about it.
All right, let's give it up for Farm, guys.
Question.
Yeah.
Your ego, is that a version of how you see yourself or how you think other people see you?
Well, I'm not, I mean, ego is a big word, right? It's a big, they've done a lot of studies on ego and Freud and everybody else. So I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I'm an expert in ego. I bring it up in the context of Think and Grow Rich and in my personal training. I've read some books on it. I think your ego gets you in trouble. Your ego is that voice in your head, your subconscious mind, by the way. A lot of people mix those up. Subconscious mind, the language of the subconscious mind is emotion. That's how we connect with each other, through our subconscious mind. The ego, what you listen to, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough, or the other end of that spectrum, which we know people like that, right? I'm always right, I never lose, everything's rigged, blah, 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 blah. Right? There's both ends of the spectrum. Right? That's your ego talking. It's not your subconscious mind. And it usually gets you in trouble. And it's something we develop. We're not born with an ego. We're born with a subconscious mind. Ego develops over time. And if you don't check it, it can get you in trouble. There's a great book, I forget the one that wrote, it's called The Dark Side of the Light Seekers. And she has a chapter about ego. And I use this all the time. She says, think of your ego as in a room. Half the room is lit, the other half is dark. The dark side is your ego, right? And the dark side doesn't want to be exposed, doesn't want to shine the light on it, right? And she, in the book, talks about pushing your ego into the corner. And I actually go through that. When my ego starts to creep up, I'll something, not out loud, because I don't want to think of people think I'm nuts. But I'll say, okay, ego, go sit in the corner. Like you're just trying to trigger, people. By the way, our egos trigger each other. Any of you have siblings, you know that, right? I got 6 siblings. Our egos trigger each other. So when that happens, I recognize this. Okay, go sit in the corner. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to allow you to run my game, right? So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's a great book. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Seekers. Thank you. That's it. Great book. It talks about the ego. So I don't know if that can answer that. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. And by the way, I couldn't do this if it wasn't for you. So I thanks to you for allowing me to present this material. So thank you.
All right, guys. How many of you guys are going to apply some of those concepts starting today, right? It's crazy. Mindset is such a huge factor that influences the growth of someone's business. We go through it all the time. And, Carl really described it a lot more eloquently than we were describing it. But ultimately, what we go and live by is like to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And every time you encounter a situation where there's some sort of resistance to you taking action towards your goals, let that sit, get used to that feeling, and be very aware of how that feeling is, and then just continue to push past it anyways. And when Carl described the situation where you're in that comfort zone, then you're in that fear zone, then you get to the point where you get to actually learn because you're doing something, and before you know it, you get desensitized to that feeling that you're getting, and then suddenly you can put yourselves in more and more situations because you just get used to feeling that level of discomfort and pushing through it anyways. And that was awesome.
So great.
Yes.
So great.
Yes. Thank you. So first and foremost, thank you guys, everybody, for coming again this month. If you weren't here earlier, we have a special going on right now for our GOB conference. It's going to be coming up in less than 3 weeks. Use the investor code Windy City REI for a $97 ticket. I also want to give it up one more time here. As always, Ben. Our guy Ben right here, Navigator Tap Room, for hosting us every single month. Make sure you guys keep your drinks full. We love to keep coming back over here.
One thing I forgot.
Yeah.
You got a contest too, right?
Yes, both of you guys. Have
So-
contests.
We're not going to draw cards, but I'd like to give one sponsor from July. I'd like to sponsor somebody in the group. So if you have your ID with you, whoever's birthday is closest to March 24th, I will sponsor you into the next July 4th course if you'd like, or normally the tuition is $700. But if there's anybody close to March 4th, 24th,
March 24th, without going over, or is it just a
doesn't have to be exactly March 24th.
March
Who's
1st,
it?
March what?
March 1st.
Your March
1st? 23, anybody closer?
Who's March? How about anybody online? Is there anybody online who has a March
Well,
birthday?
there's an April 29th. I'm April 11th, but I don't count.
Oh, you're in anyway. So you're 23 days? 23 days. So
23
what's
days,
the
so March
29th?
1st, April 29th. I
29th.
can't do that in public. There's
29 plus 7, so yeah.
Has to be somebody online.
March 29th.
All right, going once, going once.
I think it'll be.
Going once? Going twice?
Is it
It's March, so whoever's closest to what, March
24th.
March 24th. July.
When is it?
Yeah,
July. But if you can't make that one, are you close?
yeah, but I.
What's your date?
May 9th, I guess.
May, well,
March?
no, I think you're
April,
closer.
no?
Hey, I really should not be in the contract. I will gladly give it to you.
There's April 29th and May 1st.
I think April 29th is
April
closer.
29th is closer.
Yeah.
Chuck's the
Who
winner.
is that, Chuck?
Chuck Brown.
Okay. What's up, Chuck Brown?
Tell Chuck to get a hold of me.
Yeah, all right, Chuck, we're gonna go ahead, April's going to put Carl's contact information on the chat for you, so that way you can
I did, I put
redeem
it on
redeem your free course. All right, guys, thanks again for coming. Great
there.
meetup. Oh.
One ticket, July 13th.
One more ticket. Okay, so
300, what is it, $350
$150
ticket?
tickets, yeah.
okay, for the conference.
One
Yeah,
free.
One free
When-
ticket.
When's your birthday?
July, no, closest to July 13th.
Oh, okay. All right. One more giveaway is whose birthday is closest to July 13th?
One July.
Who has a July birthday in here? Anybody raise your hand?
July, August.
August might win.
Any
June?
Any June birthday? Wow.
Oh, wait. no,
Where are you
no.
guys born? It's all, you got winter birthdays over here? What's
Everybody
going on?
born in December.
When are you guys born?
All right, so we have an August birthday? Is that what we have? Is that the closest?
August 16th.
August 16th. All right, well, if there's nobody else here that has a birthday closer to July 13th than August 16th,
Wait, there's a June 30th here on
ooh, that's close.
the, wait, so what was
That's
the
2
birthday
weeks.
here?
August 16th.
No,
June
August
30th is
16th.
2 weeks. Who's that?
Lee Johnson.
Lee Johnson? Ooh, that's the closest one. That's 2 weeks. Wow, these people online are just
Thank you.
delivering right now.
We can do. Okay, we do.
Okay, all right. So here's what we'll do. We'll do two, one online, one in person. And both of you guys will be getting
Free ticket.
free ticket.
Okay.
GB conference. All right.
See April for your free ticket. She'll
Yeah, I'll
a
give you
code.
your coupon code.
Yeah, she'll give you a
for you
code
to sign
so you
up
can
online.
enter on Eventbrite so that you can get your free ticket.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all for coming. Before we go ahead and start our networking, let's go ahead and come on over to that section over there. We'll take a group picture and
Oh,
then
yeah.
we'll go ahead and get started.